On Monday the 9th, DEFRA launched the latest version of the general licence, which the NGO has been lobbying hard to get right for the last year, since the fiasco of last time round when they managed to make a complete hash of it with Natural England. There are some positives and some negatives of what's been released. The licences will come into effect on the 1st of January 2021. On the positive side, they've made them shorter, they're clearer, and they're easier to understand for the user, which is us, all of us. They're probably more legally binding with the wording than the ones that are currently in existence. And they include some significant clarifications, which you'll need to check and read to go through. The other bonus is DEFRA resisted calls from extremist bird groups to effectively ban the control of wild birds anywhere under a general licence, and then we'd have to use individual licences, which we simply know didn't work when Natural England were given hundreds of wildlife applications this spring by upland keepers, wild bird keepers and gamekeepers and farmers. They simply couldn't cope with the volume, and they were unable to issue the licences in a timely manner that needed issuing. There are some things that aren't so good, and one big problem is that rook, jay and jackdaw have been taken off for the protection of wild birds, which means that any wild bird keeper will need to apply for an individual licence to control those species. That came as a bit of a surprise to us, because on a survey conducted by the GWCT of upland keepers and wild bird keepers, over 50% of those did see rooks specifically predating on eggs. And on the NGO blog that we launched last spring, we've even got video footage of rooks, jays and jackdaws predating on wild bird eggs. So that came as a bit of a surprise, so you're all going to have to apply for an individual licence for that. Crow and magpie control in relation to conservation is limited in helping red and amber listed species. So you can only control crow and magpie to help certain red and amber listed species, which are on the licence, and you'll have to check before you do. We also feel that because of the funding cuts to Natural England and the way they handled the licensing last time, we think Natural England are going to struggle to be able to issue individual licences for the many applications that they're going to get now. That's going to need improvement, and they've not got long to work on that. So we can't have the wanton destruction of wildlife that we had last spring again for a second spring on the trot, because somebody is incapable of issuing a licence in a timely manner. There are some really strange bits in the new licences. So, for example, you can control jackdaws to prevent the spread of animal disease, but you can't control jackdaws to prevent the spread of human disease. And there's also some really great advice in there, which is quite interesting and shows some great joined up government. In DEFRA are advising farmers and others to plant single large blocks of woodlands so the pigeon nests are more widely spread out instead of small blocks and shelter belts, is something they've actually written into the licence. As opposed to their forestry organisation and the government's need to plant millions of more trees in the next few years, which is suggesting to plant shelter belts and small blocks of woodland. So that's quite a fascinating bit of joined up government, that they're all advising completely different things. Personally, I'm not sure you will get less pigeon nests and therefore less damage if you have a large block of woodland. I think that shows quite interesting forethought there. So other than actually getting hold of the licence and reading them yourselves, which I advise you will do, the NGO will be putting out some further advice on this. We're looking into the licensing, we're looking into the individual licensing, and we're looking into the reasons behind the rook, jay and jackdaw being removed for wild bird control.
Are these set in stone?
Yes, so this is the first time ever that there has not been a public consultation when the general licence has been changed. The NGO and other organisations were not given sight of these beforehand, although DEFRA told us we would be allowed to see them beforehand. They are set in stone as much as that is the licence they're currently going to publish. Those of you who will require individual licences, I strongly suggest you you apply as early as possible to ensure you get the license at the sensitive time of year that you need it this spring. It's important you have the correct evidence and you fill out the form correctly. The NGO can help our members, and we will, but I would get the licenses in as early as possible to stop the catastrophe to wildlife that we had last year.